Hey guys, what is up? SuperKmanrocks here, and I am back for my Week 3 LPL review analysis, and at the end, we have our updated power rankings. It is a very short week, at least in comparison to most LPL weeks. This week, mostly because we have kicked off the Chinese New Year break, so only half a week to go over with you guys, but that's still enough games to get excited. There were some really fun ones this week, so if you are excited, go ahead and leave that down in the comment section below. And then leave a like, obviously, if you like the content that I make, if you guys are excited about the series. If you want to leave a like after you get to watching the video, I respect that as well. So, without further ado, let's jump right into our first series of the week, which was LGD Gaming taking on OMG in a pretty shock upset win here. I don't want to say it was a gigantic shock upset, because neither of these teams are, like, top tier or anything like that, but LGD getting their first win of the season here over OMG, who are kind of free-falling after their 3-0 start. You know, they were playing some bad teams at the beginning of the year. They started playing some good teams, and now they're kind of crashing back down to earth, I think. But let's talk about the good, and let's talk about the bad. Game 1, LGD kind of pulls this one out. OMG, I would say both Game 1 and Game 3, both games that LGD won, OMG had a commanding lead, and they really were in a position to be able to close out. Game 1's more excusable. You're going into an Ornn Corki Jinx. That is a really, really difficult comp to fight into, especially as a Zed, even if you're super far ahead. You know, it's just a little bit difficult to actually get on anybody in that comp and to do damage before they can just burst you into oblivion. So, yeah, LGD ends up taking some team fights later in the game. They end up winning that one. Game 2 is a cut and dry, really standard OMG win. Jarvan is everywhere on the map, and the Jinx just gets too far ahead to really be able to do anything. But yeah, Jarvan had a great game. Aki, I should say, had a great game in Game 2. As cut and dry of a 25-minute win as you can have. And then Game 3 was pretty close, I think, for most of the game. OMG kind of had it in their favor, but LGD stayed in it. I think they did a lot of interesting things to keep themselves relevant. And then, obviously, in that last fight, we can talk about Abel all we want. Gale Force flashing into the enemy team and then basically just immediately dying. A very interesting play from an Aphelios. I understand the play he was trying to make. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if he realized he didn't have the guns for it. You know, we've seen people in the past, you know, flash in on Aphelios with red gun, you know, and just go berserk with, like, blue-red, you know, ults, like, complete, you know, lifesteal and damage and just the ridiculous output that Aphelios can give late game. He didn't have red gun. He flashed in and just started hitting with blue and died really fast because he didn't have that lifesteal. So, did that throw the game? Probably. But, you know, it is what it is. I can't give him the dud of the series because he was really good in Game 2 and he was really good in Game 3 up till that point. So, it's hard for me to give him the dud of the week, or the series here. The dud of the series for me is going to go to Shanji, who was abysmally bad, especially in Game 3. He kind of let his team down a lot. Gangplank is clearly not a champion that I think he's super accomplished on or has played a lot of. He was missing barrel combos a lot. The matchup into Ornn is relatively safe for the Gangplank for the most part, you know, as long as you play it right. He did not play it right. Fearness was the better top laner here. And not to take anything away from Fearness, who's actually had a good couple of weeks here, but that's not what you want to look like. Eric is actually going to be my player of the series over on LGD. I haven't talked about LGD much. They played fine. I mean, they were down in every game, and they came back and won. So that shows good resilience, I think, from them. Eric had by far his best series of the year. And as we're seeing, that's a pretty good trend when you go up against your former team in the LPL, is you have your best series of the year, which is exactly what happened here in the Eric Revenge game. I thought, Yeg, I gotta start saying it right. I call him Yeji for, like, the first 2 weeks, because it just makes sense. He was and now he's and with a G on it, so it just made sense to me. But, yeah, he was good as well in this series. His Corki in Game 1 was a big part of why they won. And then, Orianna Shockwaves in Game 3 are always important. Shadow, try to control the map as much as possible. He kind of got completely out-jungled in Game 2, but it happens. You know, Aki's a good jungler, and when he gets ahead, he's especially a good jungler. So, and then Fairness was really good on the Ornn. It's a pick that he's always been good on, so. In general, a necessary first win here for LGD. Not the best showing in the world from OMG, but it's fixable mistakes. And that's the best thing I can say about their 3 losses that they've had in a row here. Is all 3 feel like either games that are, oh, you lost to, like, I think they lost to, like, FPX or, like, RNG, and it's like, oh, well, who cares? Like, you're going to lose to them, right? They're too good for you. But in a series like this, they could have won. And I know that makes it frustrating as a fan, but it also makes it promising as a coach to sit back and go, okay, well, we can realistically say that we were the better team, and if we can really hone up on some of the mistakes that we made in this series, we should be fine. But as for LGD, I bet they're absolutely, we saw it at the end of Game 3, they're ecstatic to get that first win, and I'm happy for them. Hopefully they can build on that momentum. That's going to bring us into our second series here of day 1, and that was Rare Adam taking on Bilibili Gaming. Fofo, I guess, in a return game. I'm trying to find a link to the last one, but Fofo in his return game here against Rare Adam, but it's also him back on his BLG team that he was on before Rare Adam, so I don't know what you're talking about. Uyanja is subbed in here for Zora. We'll get to whether or not that's an upgrade as we talk about the series, but short answer, I don't know. Both seem really bad, so I can't really give you an update. This is a clean 2-0 win for BLG. They're just the better team by a lot. Rare Adam, I know, was getting some hype early in the year. I think they beat Top, which, you know, at the beginning of the year, like, that's a pretty nice accomplishment. We're starting to learn. Maybe not as much as we thought, but still, you know, Rare Adam being able to compete with an upper-level team, you would think they'd be all right. Bilibili, they were not able to compete with BLG. These were not two teams that were on the same level at all. So, let's first talk about the player of the series, which is Doggo, who just, I mean, you get this guy on Aphelios and he wins you the game. It's really as simple as that at this point. And, you know, I know everybody wants to see Uzi, but if Doggo's got upside and he's already playing like this, I don't know that Doggo's just not the better option. I know we're going to see Uzi after Chinese New Year, as we should, but I really do hope they take an internal look, after we've seen, you know, now we've seen what, like 8 games or so from Doggo. We'll see some more later in the week as well. Give Uzi about 8 or so games, and then, you know, if you can make that internal decision as to who we truly think is better, give them a little bit of time to gel before going into playoffs, whoever it ends up being, you know, to have it be their room. I think this, whatever you have, you're in a good spot with BLG, because Doggo looks phenomenal. I mean, I know some people were questioning his mechanics after the first couple weeks. Those are gone at this point. The guy is just really, really good, especially in team fights. Big shout out to Breathe as well here. He had a little bit of a slow start to the year. He was somebody who I would consider like the most consistent top laner outside of Xiaohu in the world last year. And his Akali showed why. He absolutely turbo stomped on Akali. He was good on the Jace as well, absolutely crushed Cube. This was very much a top gap this entire series. Those two players, I would say, were definitely the shining bright spots for BLG. But everybody played relatively well. I thought Crisp is really, really good. It's really fun to see Crisp get to play with an AD carry that he feels like he can go all out with. And not have to, I don't want to necessarily say that, like, LWX and Crisp didn't have, like, super chemistry, but LWX is having a great year now with, you know, on TES with Hang. You know, that chemistry seems to be better, and Crisp seems to have much better chemistry with Doggo here than he did with LWX. I think both parties are actually much better off with how the things in the offseason actually shook up. But either way, I think BLG had a really, really good series here. They were in control both games, and they won them cleanly. Rare Adam's just not on this level. They're an okay team, but they're not nearly the same kind of impact that a team like BLG has. I think their early season, I was right to be skeptical of this roster, is I guess what I'm trying to say, because boy, do they have some issues. Mostly support. They have to figure this position out. Uyanja comes in for Zora in this series, and he is easily the dud of the series. He was really bad. They have to figure it out. Whatever the problem is here, they have to do something. Uyanja's not the answer. Zora is not the answer. Both of them look like bottom 1 supports in the LPL. And that is not a good sign for a team that theoretically would want to make playoffs. Bot lane's just too good this year. You're going to get absolutely capitalized on if you have a big weakness like that. No matter how good iBoy is, iBoy doesn't have that kind of pressure as an AD carry to be able to keep your support safe, especially when you're Nautilus or Braum or Leona or whatever these, you know, an engaged support that really has to do their job. You can't do that if you're bad. So, that's kind of the problem Rare Adam's running into right now. On the bright side for them, their jungle mid's playing relatively well. Strive has been much better than I expected him to be. He's been a lot more consistent, at least. The Corki Victor games weren't outstanding, but they weren't bad. And I thought Leon actually had some pretty decent early games like he tends to do. He just tends to do nothing with those early games. Again, 2 picks I really like here in Poppy and Rek'Sai that I think are pretty underrated in the current meta. I think if you're gonna look at positives for Rare Adam, it's for sure going to be this mid-jungle duo that you have here. But outside of that, Cube got absolutely massacred by Breathe in lane. Weibo and Yanja got massacred by Doggo and Crisp. Pretty huge gaps in both of those lanes, just having to make up for it across the map. But, yeah, do I think Rare Adam can bounce back? You know, there's a chance that they're like a bottom-tier playoff team. I'm not ruling that out, but I think they're probably closer to where I had them in my preseason power rankings, which is outside of the playoffs. They just have some major holes that they have to fix. And right now, those just aren't being fixed, and I don't really see a world in which they can fix them. As for BLG, this team is legit. I mean, they're one of the top 4 to 5 team, you know, one of the top 4 teams, we'll say at this point, in the region for a reason. They are going to absolutely mop up teams that aren't on that level, and that's what Rare Adam was. So, a good win here for BLG. It's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. Jumping in here to day 2, kicking off day 2 for us, we had Invictus Gaming taking on Ultra Prime in a matchup that started off really boring and got really aggressive, really squashy towards the end. A 2-0 win here for Ultra Prime, as was kind of expected, I think, from these 2 rosters. Even though they have the same record, they have clearly performed differently at the beginning of this split, and that was very much proven in this series. The first game was kind of a mess from both teams. Both teams playing the early game kind of poorly just in general. I don't think either jungler played this series particularly well. But late game, at least in game 1, you've got a Corki. And Corki got online, and then Corki's gonna hurt late game. And that's exactly what happened. Cryan essentially just carried that Ultra Prime team to a win after, you know, just getting too far ahead with, you know, who on the other team is going to be able to stop a Corki at that point. Not Gwen, not Lee, not Rakan. So, yeah, unfortunately, Corki was just able to take over that game in game 1, at least unfortunately for Invictus. And then game 2, Ultra Prime clearly must have felt that game 1 was not sufficient enough, because game 2 was a problem. Let's first talk about the draft. Invictus Gaming decided to ban 5 AD carries away from Elk, the superstar player of Ultra Prime. I don't think that is questionable. Elk is the star player of Ultra Prime. They ban 5 AD carries and then take away the Ezreal. So that's basically the 6 top AD carries in IG's mind are gone. Elk has to go down to the Xayah, which is a pick. It's not a great pick right now. I wouldn't say it's a terrible pick either. It's definitely usable. But he has to go down to the Xayah. And Ultra Prime say, you know what? We don't care. We are going to spend all of our resources going bot over and over and over again until you are tilted out of your mind. And that is exactly what happened. Poor Xiao Yueji. He's my dud of the series here, but the poor guy just got absolutely massacred in game 2. I mean, that is like a confidence-destroying kind of game. And you can see it, like, you know, it's just probably incredibly hard mentally to be able to go through a game like that and then come out the other side, which is really unfortunate. But I do want to give props to Xiaoxi on the Rakan. Even on Leona in game 1 was pretty good, but the Rakan on game 2 was just disgusting. I mean, that Ezreal could do literally nothing all game long. He was not playing League of Legends. There were 9 people in that game playing League of Legends. Xiao Yueji was not one of them. And that's really disappointing for him. Elk with another really tremendous performance in the bot lane. But honestly, for me, the player of the series is going to be Xiaoxi. He absolutely took over that lane in that game. He was phenomenal. And honestly, with all the attention that Elk has been getting this year, I think it's kind of been lost how good Xiaoxi has been as well. But this bot lane has really just been tremendous. Cryan has had a good couple of series. This was a good one for him. He's had a bad couple of series as well, but that's Cryan. That's what you get out of him. Sometimes you get the good, and when you get him on Corki here 2 games in a row, that's the good. TF's getting nerfs. Maybe he'll actually get to play his 1 pick that he can play, but for now, while TF's out of the meta, I guess Corki will work. He looked like just bot over and over again, so, you know, it's just what you do, I guess, when your bot lane's ridiculously ahead in your Corki jargon, but yeah, just kind of a dominating performance from Ultra Prime. It is worth noting on Invictus Gaming side, I haven't mentioned it so far because it never really mattered. Zika is subbing in the top lane here for Nenny on the Invictus Gaming side. That's fine. They actually just picked up Zika or Daniil, whatever you want to call him. He name changed here as he joined IG. And he was fine, I guess, in this series. 2 games of Gwen into Jace Gragas. Those are decently fine matchups, but honestly, this game was not decided by top lane at all. So it's hard to know how much of an impact he had. It was a decent debut, but IG just lost so hard everywhere else on the map that it almost became a non-factor. So yeah, absolutely brutal series here for IG. Ultra Prime, you gotta say that when they see a weakness, they capitalize on it. And this team, I think, is underrated good. Hackers had a really rough start to the year, but if he can get back to where he was, at the beginning of 2020, or 2021 even, I think this team's gonna be a lot better. Cryan has definitely shown that if his team's not losing too hard, if he's not losing too hard, he can contribute. And then Elk and Shousey are actually just one of the best bot lanes in the world, and they're kind of stuck on this lower to mid-tier team, which is really sad to see, but they're a good team. Invictus Gaming's just young. This is going to happen. Hopefully Xiao Yueji's confidence isn't absolutely destroyed, because, he's young, and I don't want him to, feel like this. He's shown good things. He was really good in Demacia Cup, and he's shown good things at the beginning of the year. I would hope to see him get some more time to improve. But we'll see. We'll see with Invictus Gaming. But overall, great win for Ultra Prime. They definitely needed it. And this team is making me look smarter and smarter every day by calling them a definite playoff team at the beginning of the year. Moving into our second series here of Day 2, we had ThunderTalk Gaming taking on Anyone's Legend in a battle of two bottom-tier teams. And that was proven completely right by how this series actually unfolded. It's actually TT's first series win of the year, which means that the 0-16 dream for ThunderTalk is dead, which I think is really upsetting. We've only got one more team left in the LPL that can achieve the 0-16 dream, and it's WE of all teams, so, we'll see. But, yeah, TT is able to take out the series win here against Anyone's Legend. These are both bottom 3 teams, maybe bottom 2 teams. I mean, these teams are not good in any way, shape, or form, and this is not even TT's good roster. They still, I don't know how long the period is. Maybe they were just waiting until after Chinese New Year, but they still have Chieftain and Yucal in. Eventually, those guys are going to play, and that's going to make this team better, because Frigid has been atrociously bad for ThunderTalk, and then Captain has not had a very particularly good start to the year. Who has had a particularly good start to the year, I guess, is Southwind in the bot lane. I do like Southwind when he's on champions that he can play, which traditionally have been Thresh and Braum to a lesser extent. Really, it's Thresh. Southwind is a good Thresh. And we saw that in Game 3 for sure. Whenever that champion is up, they are going to pick it for him. And he's going to be pretty good on that. When he doesn't get it, he can be really inty. But when he does get it, he can be pretty good. Puff actually had a really good series here. He was, Betty is someone who I would consider to be the strong point of Anyone's Legend, at least to start the year so far. And while Betty also played pretty well, Puff was the better AD carry, I think, in this series. And we got to see that. His Aphelios game in Game 1 was really, really good. And, while he wasn't the main guy in Game 3 on the Jinx, it was still pretty, it was a good performance. For Anyone's Legend, they're just not good. I really have no other way to say it. Oh, by the way, all 3, it's not really worth talking about each game individually. All 3 games were boring, and all of them were predictable. All of them, one team got a lead early, and then slowly ended the game. So, in the first game, it was ThunderTalk off the back of Puff. In the second game, it was Anyone's Legend off the back of Maple's Akali. And then in Game 3, it was ThunderTalk off the back of News Camille. So, it's really just, pick your game. It's the same game, just with slightly different elements. But, yeah, not a great series from AL. Not a great series from TT either, honestly. Both teams not... It's interesting watching 2 teams that aren't good play, because the macro is really poor. And that's what we got in the series, was just poor macro in general. That'll get fixed for TT, hopefully, with Chieftain and Yukao coming in. 2 players who I would consider to have pretty decent macro, at least Chieftain. And then Xiao Hao was bad in the series. There's really no other way to put it. Xiao Hao is my dud of the series here for Anyone's Legend. He was pretty bad. Honestly, this could have gone to Frigid. I don't even think it really is that big of a jump to give this one to Frigid, but I'm going to give it to Xiao Hao just because his team lost. Both were bad. In general, really, the only 2 members, well, I guess the 3 members of Anyone's Legend that played well in this series were Maple, Betty, and then at times Chocho. Everyone else was disappointing, to say the least. And, even then, like, Chocho didn't have a great series. Maple was not that great in Games 1 and 3. He was good in Game 2. And then Betty was consistent, but he never was, like, close to taking over any game. Which is kind of the problem with Betty, is he gets gold and then does nothing with it. So, yeah, A battle between two not so great teams here. I don't want to spend too much time on this because there really isn't a ton to discuss. It's a good win for TT and it's a bad win for anyone's legend. There's really not much else to say beyond that. Moving on here to day 3. Kicking off day 3 for us was Weibo Gaming taking on Victory 5, a battle of two teams that I think are very similar in terms of power rankings going into this. I was very intrigued to see how this matchup would play out. And we had a pretty fun series, one that was, in my opinion, in Weibo's control for most of it, and they do take the series 2-1 here. Weibo looks like a pretty damn good team overall. They've had some struggles early on in the year, but some of their players are just really inconsistent, and when they get their, you know, when they work, they work. That's exactly what happened here. The biggest example of that has to be SOFM in the jungle, who is the player of the series here for obvious reasons. He finally gets to play Zed in competitive. If people don't know, obviously, I don't know how you would know this unless you're a nerd like me. SOFM is pretty well known on the Korean server for being a really, really, really good Zed jungle player. He has like 200, 300 games of Zed jungle in the Korean Challenger server. Like, in Korean Challenger, I should say. And he absolutely destroys. He has weird builds, which we saw in Game 3. And the rest of the games. It's just what SOFM does. The day he stops doing that, the day he stops being SOFM. But, yeah, he finally gets to bring it out in competitive here. And he looks great on the Zed in Game 3. Let's talk about, I guess, game by game. Game 1, Weibo had a little bit of control, but Victory 5 was able to wrestle it back, basically off the back of Rich's Akshan. Rich was somebody who I criticized pretty heavily coming into the LPL. I was actually higher on Gory and lower on Rich coming into the LPL, and it looks like my opinions were completely reversed on that, on the Nongshim solo laners. Rich was the one who came into the LPL and kind of really started to come into his own, at least a little bit. And Gory has really struggled since the transition to the LPL. But Rich looked really good here in Game 1 on the Akshan. It's a pick we're not going to see too often because you really have to have a comp that allows you to be able to pick it. You need to be able to give a lot of assistance to the Akshan. He is really the carry on any comp that he is a part of. And so you're going to have to give a lot of assistance to it. Rich got that in this game, and he did really well with it in the late game. Game 2 was a pretty decent win here. A really cut and dry win here, I would say, for Victory 5. The Viego just got too far ahead. And then Game 3 was a combo of, you want to talk about SOFM Zed, you want to talk about Hwanfeng's Zaya, you want to talk about Angel's Corki. Really kind of a takeover. The Shy playing a tank. A lot of weird things happening in Game 3 here that kind of result in Weibo's win, but it's a pretty good series here from Weibo to take down Victory 5. As for V5, not the worst loss in the world, I would say here. A couple of your members really underperformed. I think Karsa had a rough series going into SOFM. He's had a little bit of a slow start to the year, we'll say. I'm not going to say that that's going to last, because Karsa, you know, he definitely showed signs of deterioration over the course of last year. And hopefully, you know, we were kind of hoping for a bounce back here on V5 when he was playing with Rookie, but we're not getting that so far. Really, it's just been the Rookie show. And then bot lane. Bot lane has looked good in the past. PP God has had a decent start to the year, but Photic did not look good in this series. I have no other way to say it. He's going to be my dud of the series here. He got really hard gapped by Hwanfeng. And while Photic looked really good against top, he's also shown the propensity to be kind of irrelevant in some of these game series. And I think that's what happened here. Victory 5 is feeling eerily similar to Invictus Gaming last year, where it's like Rookie is really, really good and he's playing well. And he wasn't, this was Rookie's worst series of the year by far. I'll say that. It's not like Rookie absolutely dominated the series, but, you know, Rookie is kind of the carry on this team, and you have a top laner who has the propensity to carry, but also the propensity to feed. And then everybody else on the roster is kind of a big question mark right now. If they can get some more consistent performances out of their players, this V5 team should be very good, but right now, we're just not seeing that level of consistency. I guess you could say the same thing about Weibo, but they did show it in this series, so a little bit less negative to talk about in that respect. But overall, a great series here from Weibo, exactly what you wanted to see. This could be a top-tier team. I'm not saying it is yet, but definitely they are in the conversation of being around that, you know, division. If Hwanfeng can continue to play well here, and obviously if you're going to continue to get performances out of this like SOFM, you know, him and Angel are so inconsistent, it's hard to really guess, but if bot lane can be good, and if top lane, who has been really, really good, the Shy has felt like completely reinvigorated to start the year, if they can continue that for the rest of the year, Weibo is actually going to be a team that can be really, really scary come playoff time. Moving on here to the second series of day 3. Here we had LNG Esports taking on FunPlus Phoenix. Doenby taking on FPX for the first time since the split. And also, Clid. Oh, man, so many storylines here. So many things happening. Let's talk about the series, because it was actually a really fun one. Game 1 was a decently good LNG win off the back of Doenby's Tank Rise, a pick that he is very well known for. The Rise curse is not here for Doenby. He is simply too good to be affected by something that's that simple. Doenby's Rise has always been phenomenal, and, you know, even when that pick is quote-unquote bad in the meta, I trust Doenby to pick whatever he wants at this point. That's just who Doenby is. Game 2 was a really good game from LWX on the Jinx. He got really, really far ahead and was just able to snowball out of control. And then Game 3, you could kind of give it to a lot of people. Doenby had another good game on the Rise. Light had a great game on the Jinx. He was having a hard time getting in because, honestly, I guess, disengagers, quote-unquote, from FPX were doing a really good job here. Big shout-out to Clid and Hang in Game 3. They actually had decent performances. I do have one thing I want to talk about. And this might upset some of my core viewers, because I imagine my core viewers are some of the people that would be doing this. But, God, I feel so bad for Lumao. Like, I can't even begin to talk about how terrible it must be to be Lumao right now. Because he is playing like a top 5 to 6 support in the LPL, which is a really hard thing to do. He's playing so much better than he did last year. And yeah, he had a rough game 2, but he had a really good game 1, and he had an important game 3 as well. And oh my god, all he is getting is flame over and over and over. It's all just free Awandi. Lumao sucks. He's not even an LPL level support. Blah, 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 blah. I swear these people aren't even watching the games. They just stick to this one preconceived notion and flame the shit out of Lumao, and I'm losing my mind because of it. Yeah, Lumao had his worst series of the year here, and if this is his worst series of the year, this is, I mean, better than, I would say, over 50% of the supports in the LPL. This discourse of, the free Awandi discourse has reached a point where I just want to strangle every single comment that I see saying that, because, not that Awandi isn't better, don't get me wrong, I think Awandi's a better player. And I think Awandi would be better in this starting lineup, but, like, clearly LNG thinks Lumao is better, and everything Lumao does is on such a small microscope. I mean, he is getting microed into oblivion. It just gives me maybe PTSD of being, like, backseat gamed into oblivion. It's essentially what's happening to Lumao on a pro scale. You know, you're going up against one of the best teams in the world, trying to do everything you can, and the entire community is watching every single play you make, waiting for a reason to just sit there and say, oh, this is why you're terrible, this is why you're bad. I'm starting to lose my mind at the Lumao discourse. I implore anybody who is watching this, please cut the man some slack. He's playing well, but God, I mean, I imagine he's playing worse because of how the stupid community is treating him. Anyways, Doenby's player of the series. His Rise games in 1 and 3 were phenomenal. Tank Rise is just really difficult to deal with in general. And we saw that. We saw exactly that in Game 1 especially, and in Game 3. Gory just got gapped in every aspect. He's my dud of the series. He's been very weak for FPX since coming over. His laning is just not up to par in LPL standards. Laning was always his big issue in the LCK as well, but he can mitigate that by being a really good team fighter on picks like the Galio. And we're seeing that kind of here, but not, you can't get gapped in lane like you could in the LCK, because games aren't going as late as they will in the LCK. They don't extend out as far as they do in the LCK. You don't get the opportunity to kind of come back from a deficit like that, especially when you're going up against someone like Doenby, who's known for his macro play. So, Gory is my dud of the series. Doenby is my player of the series. It was really a big mid gap the entire series. That was the big difference maker. Bot lane also played really well. Light got really far ahead in Game 3 and was just able to snowball out of control. I will say LWX had a good Game 2 as well. These are just two really good bot lanes in general. Top side of the map was a little unimportant in this series. Xiaolau did lose to Ale pretty hard. He had a couple of bad games on the Graves, but, you know, nothing too outstanding. And then Clid had a really good Game 2 on the Diana, and then did a good job, I think, of keeping the game within reach in Game 3, even if he wasn't the most proactive early game. He maybe gave up a little more than he should have. He was a big reason why I think Light wasn't actually able to do much, because the Xin Zhao was pretty hard denying. So, some decent play from FPX, but LNG is a good team. And I'm tired of, I'm tired of the discourse that this is a team that, we should still be questioning whether or not they're actually good. This is a really good team. This is a top 2 team in the LPL. Tarzan is probably the best jungler in the world. Doenby is one of the top 2 to 3 mids in the world. And then Light is having a great year. Well, I'm not going to say he's in that conversation yet. They have really good talent all around them at every position. So, in general, just LNG is a top 2 team. FPX isn't going to lose too much by losing the series. It sucks that they have to go to 3-2, but both of their losses are to top-tier teams, so it's not too bad for FPX. In general, I think they can bounce back. Hopefully, Gory can get whatever he's got under control. He's got to get more consistent in lane, or else he's going to have to be replaced. But, yeah, overall, good series from LNG. Please just stop doing whatever this shit is with Lumao. Jumping into our 4th and final day of LPL Week 3 action, we had Top Esports taking on OMG in the kickoff of the day with probably the only upset of the week here, if you really want to call it an upset. OMG 2-0 over Top. This team has some issues. Not OMG, well, they do, but Top is really what I'm talking about. Has some issues right now, don't they? Let's talk about Game 1. They early pick the Jarvan and then have no early pressure. Okay, that seems like a mistake, right? You can't really come back. You have Aphelios set, so not a lot of protection for the Aphelios. A lot of hard engage, and you're going into, an Aatrox and a Jinx that have a lot of gold, right? So, yeah, it's just a loss. You can't really do much in that game. Game 2, you first pick the Jarvan. And then you also don't have an early game. You pick Renekton up in the top lane. And then you pick Xayah to maybe be a little more defensive with a Braum. And even then, you're going into a LeBlanc. You still have a Poppy on the other team. Very interesting draft decisions here from Top Esports. If you guys follow this channel, you'll know that I'm not one to talk about draft very often. I maybe do it at most once a week. And in the LPL, I don't think I have done it yet this year. It's just not something that I think is actually that important. I think it can be important when it comes to, like, player comfort, but outside of that, I think matchup dependency, at least in the current meta, just isn't as important as being good at what you're playing. That is true in this. But clearly, TES was drafted 2 comps that they are not comfortable playing. Whatever the problem is, I can't imagine they go back to these comps ever again, because these didn't work. The Jarvan is not a pick that Xiaopeng looked good on. In fact, he looked atrocious on it. Jarvan is a pick that you need to create early pressure on. That's what Jarvan does. He level 3 ganks. That's what he does. And nothing happened in this game. Xiaopeng played it super passive on the Jarvan. Hated it from top to bottom. Cream and Abel just got so far ahead in Game 2 on the LeBlanc and the Aphelios. The games were over by 20 minutes. And that's absurd to say with a comp like this, because you are the early game team. So it's crazy. I don't know. Bad drafting. Clearly, it's not what Top wanted to do, but also bad execution of a comp. You pick an early game comp with Jarvan, and even Game 2 with Renekton and Xayah and Braum, and like you're supposed to win these matchups early, and it just absolutely did not happen. So, not a good series here from Top at all. But let's talk about what OMG did right. What OMG did right was have Abel unlocked. Abel, we know, is mechanically ridiculous, and we saw that in this series. Abel kind of styled on some kids, especially in Game 1 on the Jinx. And then Game 2 was really dominated by Cream, in my opinion, on the LeBlanc, who just couldn't die. LeBlanc is absolutely unkillable if you are good enough, and that is exactly what happened. Cream, I've talked about it before in these weekly recaps, Cream is very, very quickly becoming a world-class mid laner. Not just, an up-and-coming mid laner, as we've been talking about him for the past year. He's quickly becoming one of the top mid laners in the world. And that's pretty good company to be in, I would say. And I would say he's definitely in it right now, so... a pretty good start to the year for Cream, and then Abel, again, having a really, really good series here. Cold playing really well on the Thresh, especially in Game 2 as well, but like I said, Top is just a disaster. Jackie Love needs to play more aggressive on the Xayah, but less aggressive on the Aphelios. He has to know when he can go in and when he can't. That's always been Jackie Love's problem. Xiaopeng has to do something, and then Zoom had a pretty poor series as well here. Bad Game 2 on the Renekton. You've got to get better here. Pretty much the only player that I would say is not hard inting in this series was Knight, but even then, I guess Knight on Victor, you don't have a ton of agency, but it's not like Knight was doing much. And Knight's honestly had a really slow start to the year, in my opinion, anyways. This is not the hyper carry performance that we have seen out of Knight in previous seasons. He is playing much more passive, much more reactionary, which is just not what you want to... That's not what a world-class player does. A world-class player doesn't play reactionary. A world-class player creates their own situations. That's just not what's happening right now for top. So they have a lot they need to figure out. Lucky for them, Chinese New Year is here, and they have some time to really figure it out. So hopefully whatever their issue is, they can get it, sorted before we see them again. But this team just has too much talent to be a bottom playoff team like they kind of are right now. But a good win for OMG. They really needed a mental reset after 0-3 in their last 3 series. And this was it. Them absolutely battering top was a really good way to reset mental. Their 2 carries played really well. Shanji played well in the top lane. Cold played well at support. Really, Aki, quote-unquote, was the weakness. But even then, he was a great facilitator on the Poppy. It's a pick that I think we're going to see a lot of people go back to in the upcoming weeks, because we're seeing it rise in popularity a lot recently with how good it is. So, yeah, overall, just OMG needed this series a lot, and Top's got a lot to figure out. Kind of a series that both teams, I think, are going to be happy to have now, of all times, going into Chinese New Year. Moving on to the final series here of Week 3, we had RNG, Royal Never Give Up, taking on BLG, Bilibili Gaming, in a battle of 2 of the top 4 teams in the region. RNG does pick up the win here in a 2-1 series win. That was basically just a battle of top laners. That's really what this one came down to, was Bin versus Breathe, arguably the 2 best top laners in the region. Now that Xiaohu is in the mid lane again, of course. Going head-to-head, and both of them looking good for at least 1 point in the series. Game 1 was really decided here by Bin getting super ahead on the Gwen, and being able to transition that lead down to bot lane and just getting Gala ahead as well. And then just kind of creating, dragon pressure, everything, map pressure, etc. Macro. Bin has great macro when he's ahead. Gwen is one of those champions that can do that really easily. A very, very good game here from RNG. Game 2 was decided by the Tryndamere. The Tryndamere getting really far ahead thanks to a lot of assistance from that Rek'Sai on Weiwei. And then Tryndamere basically just being unstoppable and ending the game on his own. Game 3, Camille Lover came out, baby. This is an exciting thing for those of you who don't know. Bin's Korean solo queue name is Camille Lover. He got to play it here in Game 3, and he looked like a Camille one-trick. He certainly did play like it. He played amazing in this game. Absolutely destroyed the Jace, destroyed the Rek'Sai. There was really not much that BLG could do. This series entirely was decided by whether or not Bin or Breathe was going to win that top lane, which is not something that you hear very often in 2022. So that's pretty cool to see, I would say, in my opinion. But there's more to talk about than that. Xiaohu's really good. What a shocker there. He's kind of been the guy on RNG to start the year. It's really good to see Bin kind of get a player of the series here under his belt and actually be worthwhile. Not that he hasn't been worthwhile, but like really be the best top laner in the LPL like he had been last year. Well, I guess outside of Xiaohu, obviously. It's good to see Bin kind of get back to that number 1 ranking that I expected him to be at the beginning of the year. But Xiaohu's still playing well. On the Corki especially, it's a pick that he doesn't really have to do much or do too much early game. He can kind of let the attention go topside, and then he's still going to be really, really good in these team fights as well. Same with the Jinx pick for Gala. Gala always defaults to the Aphelios when he can, but BLG kind of saved RNG a couple times in the series by first picking the Aphelios. Which I get, it's Doggo's pick as well, but Gala plays much better on this Jinx than he does on the Aphelios, and, he was forced onto the Jinx a couple times, and they won both of those games. So, pretty good there from RNG. Hopefully they figure out that they're actually better with Jinx all along. But I don't want to take away too much from Doggo. I know a lot of people are going to flame Doggo, because, he didn't have the biggest impact in the series, but I actually thought Doggo was easily the best performing member of BLG in their losses. It's really hard to, really stand out on Aphelios when your team is really hard inting, because you have to have peel. But Doggo does so much damage. He actually has really, really decent mechanics. And I know some people are shitting on him and being like, oh, so now look at what happens when he goes up against an actually good AD carry. I actually thought he looked great in the series, at least in comparison to the rest of the team. Breathe had a really good game too, but he got slaughtered in games 1 and 3. And then Weiwei had a good game too, but again, got slaughtered in games 1 and 3. Weiwei's my dud of the series here, and we'll get to that. Fofo was essentially irrelevant. Crisp was essentially irrelevant. Doggo was really the only member, I think, that all 3 games was actually doing something. And that's unfortunate for BLG, because on the Aphelios, you just can't really translate that into anything. So, a decent series here from Doggo, but not from Weiwei. Weiwei, like I said, dead of the series. You can't get completely out-pressured like this. Basically just got taken over by Bin. Bin was the better jungler this game than Weiwei. Weiwei's kind of been a little bit up and down for BLG. He was my biggest question mark for this team going into the year, but he actually had a really strong start to the year. We're seeing a little bit of the cracks start to show in what Weiwei has to offer, at least in this first loss of the season. Just kind of the Weibo that we saw a couple of years ago, and not so much the Weibo we saw last year. I just got to see more consistency, really, out of him, and that's really what we're looking for. Fofo has to step up more. I know he's going into Xiao, who is just a better mid laner than he is, but Fofo has to do something. He is kind of the quote-unquote main carry that this team is built around while Uzi is not here, and so he has to kind of win games, or at least be super relevant in the late game, and he wasn't in any of these games, and he's really got to step that up. So some things definitely to work on for BLG, but a huge win here for RNG, who is legitimately a great team. Let's not take that away from him. Bin's best series of the year so far. Xiaohu's still phenomenal. Gala has learned that he finally gets to play Jinx, and we clearly learned that Wei is better than Wei. So, you know, a lot of fun things learned in this series, but a good win overall for RNG. They're going to be really happy about this going into Chinese New Year. Alrighty, that is going to do it for week 3 here in the LPL. A shorter week, a shorter video. Hope you guys aren't a little too upset by that. On the left of what you're seeing currently, you're going to see the standings of the LPL. There are no ties, so I don't have to do my usual disclaimer. We're at that point in the LPL where it's pretty cut and dry. On the right, you have my current power rankings with it listed how it has changed from last week to the right of each team. We're going to go over the biggest risers and the biggest fallers. The biggest riser this week is going to be Weibo, jumping up from 8 to 6 with that nice win over V5. They solidify themselves kind of on the outskirts of that top tier with FPX, in my opinion. You know, they jump above both V5 and top Esports. Some people are going to get pretty mad at me. The top is still up at number 8. Remember, this isn't a cut and dry stand. There's a reason there's a difference between the standings and the power rankings on this sheet for me. The power rankings are my confidence in a team. I still believe that top is a better team than LGD Gaming and Ultra Prime, even if they might be below them in the standings. And even if they lost to OMG, that doesn't mean I just automatically assume OMG is the better team 100 times out of 100. So, you know, you can argue if you want down in the comment section, but it's my opinion. That's the whole point of these power rankings, is it's my opinion. So, the other big risers, LGD and Thunder Talk, jumping ahead of Anyone's Legend and WE. WE kind of getting the short end of the stick. They're the only winless team. They didn't play this week, so they fall down to 17. They do look really bad. Bilibili looks like maybe the worst player in the league, so I see why they dropped, but LGD and TT getting some wins. TT might skyrocket up this chart when they get chiefed into UCal. I don't know how good that team's actually going to be, but we're going to have to wait and see on that. Some other risers, OMG jumps for Adam, and I think that's actually it. Everybody else is unchanged, so yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. My player of the week this week, for those who are interested, is going to be Bin on RNG. Obviously, a much smaller sample size. A lot of these people only played one series, so Bin is going to be my player of the week here for RNG. My dud of the week is unfortunately gonna go to poor Xiao Yueji on Invictus Gaming, the AD carry. Just a rough series for Xiao Yueji this week. He's going to be my dud of the week, and Bin is going to be my player of the week. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed, please go ahead and leave a like. Leave your opinions down in the comment section below. Let me know what your favorite series of the week was, how you would change your power rankings, all that fun stuff. I hope you guys are having a great day. I hope you continue to have a great day, and I will see you all later.